So he eventually shows his badge to security. Security is freaking backed up, and he's like throwing ice on the girl from the sculpture that he broke, and he's like throwing ice, and he's rubbing her down with the ice and on the face and the neck, and she ends up coming through. Like she ends up like waking up, and then EMS arrives and they take her, but he's like going back and forth with So Young about like how this should have gone down and everything, and he's like, well, this is what she has and whatnot, and he's like, if you're wrong, you're gonna have to treat me for a meal, so I'll see you next time for my free meal. And that's how it ends. Like he's like mocking her, like, you're not even a doctor, right? Like you must be learning, you must be a resident. Shooting into a new scene with Director Shin, and she's having a meeting with her father-in-law, which I take it's either the president or chairman, a high title, right? And they're talking about the medical team, and he's like, whose plan was this? You know how much it's going to cost us? And she's talking about how it was Chief Han's idea, and she was the one that really pushed for it. And then all of a sudden, her father-in-law brings up, like, oh, by the way, your husband's been with, like, found a new girl, and da-da-da, and being here and there. Basically talking down to her. And, like, you're a woman, you should just focus on being the wife to my son, who's obviously cheating on you. And I'm like, this is totally sexist and so freaking annoying. Like, I want to choke these people. Like, she's talking business. Why you gotta bring up about your loser son who's obviously not putting his foot forward and working? She's working. You should be grateful that your daughter-in-law is like this. But instead, he's miserable because she's not a good wife, that she's being cheated on. Like, that's not her fault. That's her husband's fault. That's your son's fault, man, not hers. So this meeting was occurring and Chief Han was there, and at one point the director ends up leaving because obviously the chairman president is being a total D-bag, and he's just talking down to her about how her husband's cheating on her and she's incompetent being a wife because being successful in the work experience is nothing, right? But she ends up leaving, and he's talking to Chief Han, and they're saying, like, even though we don't have the same last name, you are my son, you are my blood, and people talk about it. So I guess people know, so he's like an illegitimate son, right? So we'll see how, you know, this is going to happen. But basically, Chief Han's in charge of finding the candidates now for this top team. So in the parking lot, Chief Han's about to get in his car. Secretary popped out of nowhere, is greeting him. They're speaking kind of colloquial, what I see, like more comfortable towards one another, but basically the secretary is like exhausted, like, what do you think of this the recent candidates I showed you for the top team? He said, no, I don't approve. So basically they're going on and on, like looking for this like perfect team. And all of a sudden, like, somebody walked by and the secretary went from speaking relaxed to like super formal. And I thought that was interesting. I mean, is this another side to Chief Han? Is he really like more laid back and he just puts up a front? Or are these guys like really cool friends? Like, I need to know, I need to know. Coming off on the countryside, off a public bus, getting onto a bike, we see Dr. Park, and it really kind of shows his like free-spirited, relaxed, like fun character, just taking a ride. And I'm like, where is he going? Is he going home? He ends up going to the hospital that he works at. And it shows him having a really close relationship to everybody. Like, all the patients are saying hi, he's stopping here and there, treating people, just talking to them, and he's still, like, not even in uniform. Bumps into his director, and it seems like they're longtime friends, the way they're talking, and they get along so well. And at one point, you know, Park is going on, you know, goes into the room to change, and the director tells the nurse, like, don't tell him anything, keep it hush-hush. So something's being hidden there. Is this man sick? Is he closing the hospital? And he's not telling Park Tae-shin about it. Why? I want to know. I'm curious. We also are introduced to the child patient that Dr. Park was discussing during the interview of being able to take her. Ends up being a girl because I totally forgot her name. Take her with him to the U.S. so she could get surgery, and it shows like how close his relationship is with patients. So I really like this character. He's like super sweet, good looking, and he's like, so we're in the break room of Hwang-Hai University, and we see Choi An-jin, and it looks like she's just like napping or like relaxing in the break room, listening to music on the computer, and all of a sudden, like, she gets a call and she hears Professor So Young is there and just arrived. So this girl's flipping out, running around. So I guess she's not doing what she's supposed to be doing. She's probably a slacker. And then we kind of shoot in the scene of Minu, Kim Sung-woo, another doctor, intern, resident. And he's with Professor So Young, and he's discussing and reviewing all of his patients that he's been checking up. So they're like on point. So, you know, he's probably like the A+ student. And here comes Jin rushes in, and she ends up forgetting to do half the things, and Sung Woo kind of like defends her and like, oh, it was my fault, and you know, the typical thing. So I'm thinking, oh, Sung Woo likes you, Jin. He likes you. He likes you because it's a competitive world. Like, you didn't do your shit, bitch. Like, you're on your own. Jung talking to So Young, and I guess there's like she's about to have she's about to do surgery on someone that's like really important, and he's like, all right, this relies on what's going to happen to you in your job. Like, I guess she could, you know, have a promotion and whatnot, and you know, this will help the hospital. And if she fails, this will hurt the hospital. So Soju Young ends up asking a nurse to update the status of the server that passed out, and guess what? Dr. Park was right. You were wrong. You have to treat him to some free freaking food and like I'm so happy he's right because she was being really stubborn and I didn't really like her attitude right away, but it's that kind of like punky attitude that you know it's gonna make the show like super fun. So it looked like Dr. Park was driving a truck like delivering some items and he just happened to see on the sign that Hwanghae University was right there, so he ended up taking that route and checking up the patient. Looks up the doctor, Soju Young. I was confused her name. Soju Young ends up talking to her, finds out that he was right, and he's like, "Treat me to dinner." And she just kind of shut him down. She's like, "If you want, give me your account info, and I'll transfer you money." Ew, much like really liking her character until that moment. I was like, shady little beep beep beep, like. Are you just a little bit butthurt because you were wrong and he was right? Like, is that what it is? Because that's what it seemed like. And then all of a sudden, after Dr. Park bounces, here comes Chief Han, asks her out for dinner, and she's all like, yeah, yeah. Takes her to a fancy place and shit and stuff. And she was just saying, like, how people just assume she gets to where she is because of him. So I'm like, are they in a relationship or are they planning to be in a relationship? Since people are gossiping, the only reason she's gotten to where she was is because of him, so people must be assuming things, and they're putting up a face that it looks like something's happening. So during the dinner, she was having difficulties just lifting her chopsticks because of the wrist injury when Dr. Park pushed her out of the way so he could save the server. And Chief Han was worried or concerned because she has that big deal surgery coming up, and she was saying she was fine. No, she wasn't. We see Dr. Park having dinner with the director of the clinic that he's been working for, and it points out that he's been working for free and is a longtime friend. So I'm like, how's he making money? But he gets free room and board and all that stuff, but they're eating like ramen. Like, you know, he's not really living a luxurious life while helping this guy, but they must have like a childhood closeness. They're talking about him finding his parents since his adoptive parents died. And dinner's interrupted by this kid carrying the patient, the one that he wanted to take for surgery in the U.S. because she has this thing that she kind of runs away and like tries to look for her mom, and this time it went really bad and he needed to perform surgery on her, but they didn't have the equipment, so they had to look for the next one that did. And what hospital is that? Hwanghae University Medical. So they get to Hwanghae University Medical spot, and he's telling all the other interns or residents, like, this needs to be done, this, all the information of his patient. But he can't do anything because this is not his hospital. He has to, like, trust these people to do everything. And Ajin, Dr. Ajin, calls Soju Young, and it's like, this and this is happening, so she's coming down. And once she walks in, Dr. Park's telling her all the conditions, how she needs to have surgery now, and they make eye contact, and they're like, oh, crap. So she's like, I'll perform the surgery because you know what? He was right about last time. He's right about this time. So while Professor Seo Ju-young is preparing for this surgery, Chief Han's getting a call. This big deal guy just had like some kind of issue, code blue, and how he needs to have surgery now. But now the issue is Seo Ju-young is in the operating room with the child. So she decides to put the child back and take care of this person because he's a big deal, or like someone in politics and stuff. So this was an issue. Her and Dr. Park were arguing, and he's like, my child needs to be first. She was in the operating room. You're basically going to take her out of the operating room to then put this client in to take care of him. And Chief Han, walks in and he's like, this needs to be done because he's going to die and blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, then let me do it. And he shows like certification, like I'm a surgeon, let me do her surgery. Da 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 da. So ends up happening. He ends up doing an amazing job. And then who's effing up in their surgery? She is. And long story short, it ends with him walking in. He's like, let me help you. Because she was also having issues because of her wrist. So I'm like, what's going to happen? Is she going to accept the help? This guy's hemorrhaging and blood splattering everywhere. And I was like, oh my god. The second episode is up, but I'm going to watch it tomorrow. Oh, that's so crazy.